Summer 1940. The United Kingdom is seized by anxiety over an impending German invasion. France has fallen, and a combined German air and sea assault on the British Isles now seems inevitable. As both nations rush to prepare, their air forces clash for dominance in the skies above Britain. For Germany, victory in the air is vital for an amphibious landing. But even with success, could they truly conquer Great Britain? By June 1940, Britain faces a deepening crisis. German forces have crushed France, forcing the evacuation from Dunkirk. On June 10th, Norway capitulates after a German amphibious assault, and by June 30th, the Channel Islands, British soil, fall under occupation. Britain's pre-war plans never imagined a Europe dominated by German forces from Norway to Spain. At this moment, Britain's home forces include 15 infantry divisions and 1 armored division, most of them understrength and poorly trained. Reinforcements arrive from evacuations, the Commonwealth, and emergency recruitment, yet weapons and supplies remain scarce. British engineers hastily construct chains of pillboxes, mortar pits, and fortified houses across the countryside, especially along the coastal crust and the general headquarters line. Innovative defenses appear, too. Like the flame fougasse, barrels of incendiary fuel meant to engulf invaders. Pre-organized guerrilla units are ready to disrupt German supply lines if the invasion comes. A massive recruitment campaign begins for the local defense volunteers. Within 6 days of its creation in May, 250,000 men outside conscription age enlist. Yet with only 70,000 rifles to equip them, many resort to makeshift weapons. Improvised weapons could be usefully supplemented by a packet of pepper to interfere with the vision of any persistent, unwelcome visitor. Fleming 201. British fears stem partly from overestimating German strength, especially their tanks, mechanization, and paratroopers. The threat of airborne troops, in particular, seems to render the English Channel meaningless as a defensive moat. A June 1940 pamphlet warns civilians, "Remember, if parachutists come, they will not be feeling brave. They will want you to give them food, transport, and maps. Do not give any German anything. Hide your food, your bicycles, and your maps. See that the enemy gets no petrol." Ministry of Information. To Britain's leaders, Germany's domination of Europe seems unstoppable, and they fear Britain is next. We may therefore be sure there is a plan, perhaps years in the making, for destroying Great Britain, which has the honor of being Germany's chief and foremost enemy. Fleming 35. Yet Adolf Hitler has no clear plan for defeating Britain. A Kriegsmarine report from November 1939 envisioned an invasion of East Anglia but doubted its feasibility. By early July, Hitler still hopes Britain will negotiate peace. Hitler astonished us by speaking with admiration of the British Empire. He said he only wanted Britain to recognize Germany's position on the continent. His aim, he said, was to make peace on terms Britain could accept with honor. Rag 41, but on July 16th, after RAF bombers begin striking German targets, Hitler reluctantly orders preparations for Operation Sea Lion. Since England, in spite of her hopeless military situation, shows no signs of being ready for peace, I have decided to prepare a landing operation against her and, if necessary, to carry it out. Trevor Roper. The Wehrmacht, Luftwaffe, and Kriegsmarine scramble to form a strategy, but each has conflicting aims. The Army advocates a surprise attack along a broad front with up to 40 divisions and tanks. Their tactical plan likens it to crossing a vast river, driven by aggressive spirit. It is assumed the battle will proceed as an attack across a river, though no fire support can be provided from the far shore. Alle Führer gehören nach vorn. Ihr Beispiel entscheidet. All leaders must be at the front. Their example will decide. Okay, the Navy rejects this outright, lacking the transport capacity for 40 divisions. They favor a smaller, concentrated assault to minimize risk from the Royal Navy. General Halder furiously responds, "I utterly reject the Navy's proposal. From the Army's perspective, it's suicide. I might as well feed the troops straight into the sausage machine." Grinnell Milne 61. A compromise emerges. An initial force of 13 divisions, around 90,000 men, to land at 3 beaches shielded by minefields, supported by paratroopers. They would secure a line from Gravesend to Warsash, then a second wave landing in Dorset would advance on Bristol. The full invasion force would eventually reach 260,000 men, pushing to a new line from Gloucester to Malden, encircling London and forcing Britain's surrender as in France. The plan, however, is riddled with flaws. Tidal variations make simultaneous landings impossible, destroying any chance of surprise. A 12-hour gap between the first and second waves leaves beachheads exposed to counterattack. Germany lacks marine infantry, amphibious experience, and proper landing craft. To fill the gap, the Kriegsmarine requisitions 2,400 river barges, some welded together to survive the Channel crossing, many destined never to return. Beyond logistics, another challenge looms: the Royal Air Force. Hitler orders Luftwaffe Chief Hermann Göring to win air superiority over southern England before any invasion in late September. The RAF, exhausted after the fall of France, has lost 2,500 men, including 300 pilots and 950 aircraft. The Luftwaffe has lost 3,600 killed or missing and 2,400 aircraft, mostly bombers and transports, whereas the RAF's losses were largely fighters crucial for home defense. Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding had resisted sending more squadrons to France once defeat was certain, but many remaining pilots lack combat experience. To pave the way for invasion, the Luftwaffe must dominate the skies. Both sides quickly learn that twin-engine fighters, Bf-110s, dive bombers, Ju-87s, and older biplanes, Gloucester Gladiators, are highly vulnerable. In fact, RAF bomber crews suffer the highest casualties during raids into Germany. The struggle for control thus becomes a duel between fighters: the Spitfire, the Hurricane, and the Bf-109. The age-old question, which was superior, has no easy answer. Both aircraft are remarkably similar: short-ranged, fast, agile, and technologically advanced. The Bf-109 has heavier armament, a sharper dive, and fuel injection, while the Spitfire excels in turning ability but lacks both. Pilot skill and tactics prove decisive. Luftwaffe pilots, more battle-hardened after France, prefer high-altitude attacks in Rotte, Pair, and Schwarm, 4-plane formations, tactics still used today. The RAF, by contrast, flies in tight 3-plane Vic formations, making them slower to react and vulnerable. Fighter Command hesitates to reform due to limited training time, though some squadrons begin adapting on their own. Despite Germany's strength, 3 key factors favor Britain. First, geography. German fighters' limited range restricts their time over Britain, while British pilots can refuel and return to battle quickly. Downed RAF pilots often land safely on home soil. Germans captured do not return. Second, radar. The chain-home network detects Luftwaffe formations long before they cross the Channel, allowing the RAF to scramble interceptors in time. Radar formed part. The first fully integrated and advanced air defense network combined radar with ground observers and filter rooms that swiftly transmitted critical information to anti-aircraft batteries and fighter bases. Jump cut. This system ensured that the Luftwaffe could no longer strike by surprise. Ultimately, the Luftwaffe was drawn into a conflict it was never intended to fight. Though German doctrine emphasized bombers as the core of air power, jump cut, the force itself had been built for short-range continental warfare, as seen in Poland and France. Over Britain, it now faced a type of campaign that no air force in 1940 was truly prepared to win. In July 1940, the Battle of France gave way to the Battle of Britain. The Luftwaffe fielded about 2,200 ready aircraft, mostly bombers and dive bombers, divided between Luftflotten 2 and 3 across the Channel and Luftflotte 5 in Norway. Opposing them were around 640 operational fighters, largely Hurricanes and Spitfires, spread across 4 RAF fighter command groups. The heaviest pressure was expected on No. 11 Group, led by New Zealander Air Vice Marshal Keith Park, while the other groups stood ready to assist. From mid-July to August 12th, the Luftwaffe began the Kanalkampf, or Channel Battle. Operating over the English Channel, they bombed British convoys and tried to lure RAF fighters into perilous engagements over water. These early clashes discredited interwar theories about air combat, such as the belief that two-seaters with rear gunners could outfight single-seat interceptors. British Defiance, German Stukas, and Bf-110s all suffered heavy losses against faster modern fighters. Luftwaffe casualties surpassed RAF losses, but Air Chief Marshal Dowding understood he could not trade plane for plane without disastrous attrition. Eventually, British shipping ceased using the channel, effectively yielding its skies. Göring seemed to have won the first phase. Yet the RAF steadily recovered, replenished weekly with new pilots from the Commonwealth, occupied Europe, and the RAF Volunteer Reserve. Still, many replacements arrived with barely 9 hours of unit experience and no combat training. In the second phase, the Luftwaffe shifted focus to coastal radar, air bases, and aircraft factories. They managed to disable some radar stations, but inconsistent strikes and poor damage assessment allowed the British to repair them quickly. As the fighting spread over southern England, Dowding committed only limited forces to disrupt bombing raids, giving the illusion that fighter command was nearing collapse. Göring, confident, prepared a decisive strike for mid-August. Adler-Angriff, the Eagle attack. Between August 13 and 19, the Luftwaffe launched massive assaults on RAF infrastructure, peaking on August 15 with 1,800 sorties. Southern England's skies erupted with daily dogfights and mounting casualties. Ammunition shortages made engagements short and fierce. Tracers passed above and below, curving downward, as if flying inside a golden cage. I saw another target, a Hun just to my right and above, raised my nose and fired at 75 yards. After seconds, the steady beat of my 8 Brownings faded to faint clicks. A glance in the mirror, 3 109s behind. I rolled the Hurricane, skidding and diving flat out. Mason 322. Though the Luftwaffe damaged several airfields and depots, the British repaired most quickly and German forces rarely followed up. One special unit, Erprobungsgruppe 210, achieved success using Bf-110s in fast, low-level strikes, but overall doctrine remained rigid. Most 110s continued to serve as cumbersome heavy fighters. Historian Stephen Bungay later wrote, "Had all Bf-110 crews been retrained for fast pinpoint attacks like Erprobungsgruppe 210, Göring might have held a war-winning weapon," Wiener 224. Intelligence failures also hindered operations. The Luftwaffe wasted about 50 aircraft striking non-fighter command bases and wrongly assumed all RAF strength lay in the south. On August 15th, a poorly escorted Heinkel force from Norway attempted to hit northern England, expecting little resistance, only to be intercepted by No. 13 Group, which destroyed nearly 20% of the attackers. Between August 13-19, the Luftwaffe lost 363 aircraft to all causes, mostly bombers, while the RAF lost 178. British fighters were bringing down large numbers of German planes, but most British losses were fighters, and for the first time, attrition exceeded replacements. Crews and machines were wearing thin. The Luftwaffe, too, was fraying. Pilot Ulrich Steinhilper flew 7 sorties in one day. Outwardly, we held steady, but tempers shortened. Arguments flared. The relentless pressure of frontline flying was showing. Holland. Still, experience sharpened German tactics. Faint raids began to confuse radar, and by late August, the Luftwaffe better understood the RAF sector system, repeatedly striking fighter fields like Biggin Hill. Squadron leader Deacon Elliott remembered, "No sooner had we landed and refueled than the Germans bombed again, 2 days in a row. 29 killed yesterday, 7 today." Clark 125. The RAF now had more pilots than aircraft, but numbers dwindled, from 1,400 in July to 1,000 by late August. Polish and Czechoslovak pilots were finally mobilized despite Dowding's earlier concerns about communication. These losses deepened command tensions. Number 12, Groups Trafford Lee Mallory, supported by Ace Douglas Bader, pushed for large big-wing formations, opposing Dowding and Park's smaller defensive tactics. Park argued big wings took too long to assemble, especially in No. 11 Group, where minutes often decided the outcome. The experiments failed to deliver results, but the Big Wing controversy would echo through the RAF long after the battle. Meanwhile, in occupied ports, the German invasion fleet gathered. On September 7th, British High Command issued the Cromwell warning, invasion imminent. That same day, the Luftwaffe redirected attacks from air bases to London. Some said Hitler's fury over an RAF raid on Berlin, itself retaliation for an earlier bombing of London, prompted the switch. Others believed Goering sought a decisive morale blow before invasion. In either case, the shift spared fighter command. With airfield attacks reduced, RAF recovery quickened. Number 11 Group's Keith Park recalled, "Late on 7 September, I flew over London. The East End and the Thames estuary were a dreadful sight. But though angry, I said, thank God, for the methodical Germans had turned from my vital airfields to the cities." Clark 142. The battle reaches its climax on September 15th, when two massive German daylight raids, around 250 bombers escorted by more than 300 Bf-109s, clash with 300 RAF fighters. The Bf-109s, now forced into close escort duty, lose much of their flexibility and become easier targets. The Luftwaffe suffers the loss of 80 aircraft, including 23 Bf-109s, while the RAF loses 35. 2 days later, Hitler indefinitely postpones the invasion of Britain. Fighting continues into October, but the Luftwaffe gradually shifts to safer, though less precise, night raids. By October 31st, Dowding declares the Battle of Britain won. RAF Fighter Command has lost 449 pilots and about 1,500 aircraft destroyed or damaged. Luftwaffe casualties total 2,500 killed, 900 captured, and nearly 2,800 aircraft lost or damaged, most of them bombers, whose larger crews account for heavier human losses. German raids also kill roughly 23,000 civilians. The Luftwaffe's defeat stemmed from many causes: British radar, weak German intelligence, and the tactical disadvantage of fighting over hostile territory. But fundamentally, it was a battle the Luftwaffe was never designed to fight. German air doctrine, shaped by interwar theories of strategic bombing, was limited by finances and the Army's dominance in military planning, leaving an air force tailored mainly for supporting ground troops with dive and light bombers. These aircraft lacked the reach and power for independent strategic warfare. At the same time, expectations that air battles would resemble naval duels led to investment in expensive turret-equipped heavy fighters. As a result, Germany failed to produce enough agile single-engine fighters, the true key to air superiority. Historian Jens Wehner explains, the Luftwaffe flew many inefficient aircraft, bombers or Zerstorer, into combat. Its technical advantages in 1940 achieved little. To prioritize fighter production, Luftwaffe leadership would have needed to abandon their existing doctrine, something never considered, as the victories of 1939-40 concealed its flaws. Wehner 228. Strategically, Luftwaffe leadership and intelligence were unprepared for a sustained air campaign. In continental operations, striking a single target near the front often sufficed. Over Britain, the destruction of RAF infrastructure demanded constant and deliberate attacks, something the Germans failed to sustain. Consequently, most damage proved temporary. By contrast, the RAF had been purpose-built to defend Britain from strategic bombing. Former Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain deserves credit for emphasizing affordable single-seat fighters like the Spitfire, while others, including Churchill, favored bombers or heavy fighters. The government also invested in radar and the complex command and control network that made fighter command effective. Historian John Ray notes, if the David and Goliath analogy is accepted, the former was better prepared and the latter less fearsome than often assumed. Ray 55-56. It is often said that victory in the air saved Britain from invasion and defeat, but historians still debate whether Operation Sea Lion ever truly stood a chance. Could it have succeeded? It's impossible to know with certainty what might have followed a British defeat in the skies. Some scholars suggest that if the full invasion force had landed, Germany might have met its immediate objectives, though Britain's surrender remained uncertain. Yet even a Luftwaffe victory in August or September would not have guaranteed an invasion. There were only 7 suitable tide days for landing, meaning Germany would have had to maintain air supremacy far longer while the RAF regrouped at airfields beyond German reach. The Royal Navy's home fleet was another obstacle. With limited torpedo bomber capability, the Luftwaffe was ill-equipped to neutralize it from the air. The Kriegsmarine, still weakened from Norway and short of heavy warships, was unprepared for battle in the Channel. Within days, the Royal Navy would likely have cleared minefields and cut German supply routes. Losses would have been severe, but halting or crippling Sea Lion would have justified them. German planning was also deeply flawed. The invasion called for 100,000 men in the first 2 waves using roughly 2,000 converted river barges, compared to the Allies' 1944 Overlord, which required 4,000 purpose-built landing craft to transport 132,000 troops. By then, the Allies had learned from years of amphibious operations in Europe and the Pacific. In 1940, Germany had none of that experience. Inter-service rivalry further crippled coordination. Hitler's tendency to hold separate meetings instead of joint briefings hindered unity. Some commanders privately doubted Sea Lion from the outset but hesitated to oppose Hitler's directive. Vice Admiral Kurt Asman later admitted, when the final decision came, none of the responsible officers dared oppose the plan, though all were relieved to use the lack of air mastery as the open reason to abandon it. Grinnell Milne, 175-176. Even if invasion were feasible, would Germany truly have attempted it? Occupying Britain, likely a long and draining effort, would have diverted resources just as Hitler's attention was turning eastward. From Berlin's perspective, conquering Britain wasn't essential to attacking the Soviet Union, and might even delay it. By December 1940, Hitler was already planning the assault on the USSR. Unlike the cautious tone of Directive No. 16, Directive No. 21 was unequivocal. The German Wehrmacht must be prepared to crush Soviet Russia in a quick campaign, Operation Barbarossa, even before the war against England is concluded. For this purpose, the Army will employ all available units. Trevor Roper. Thus, as 1941 dawned, Britain remained defiant, while Hitler's obsession with the East steered Germany toward the two-front conflict it had long sought to avoid. In British memory, the Battle of Britain endures as the triumph of the few, those outnumbered fighter pilots who faced the Luftwaffe. Yet that image overlooks the thousands of others who made victory possible: bomber crews, coastal command, the observer corps, radar operators, plotters, ground crews, anti-aircraft gunners, and civil defenders. For those interested in exploring their roles, from radar networks to the intricate air defense system, the Battle of Britain documentary series by Real Engineering offers a detailed look, using advanced 3D animation and first-hand accounts. And for a closer study of the enormous logistics behind history's greatest amphibious assault and why it succeeded where Operation Sea Lion could not, Real Engineering's Logistics of D-Day series is essential viewing. Both are available on Nebula, a creator-driven streaming platform free from YouTube's algorithm and ad restrictions. There, you can watch exclusive programs like the Battle of Britain, Logistics of D-Day, and our World War II documentaries, 16 Days in Berlin and Rhineland 45, all in 4K, viewable on smart TVs and phones. Sign up at nebula.tv real-time history for just $30 per year. You'll also get ad-free early access to all our releases, including Real Engineering's deep dive into the Spitfire. Once again, that's nebula.tv real-time history, only $30 a year, while supporting this channel directly. All our sources are listed in the video description below. Be sure to watch our video on the Battle of France to see how events led to the skies over Britain. If you're watching this on Patreon or Nebula, thank you for your support. I'm Jesse Alexander, and this has been a production of Real-Time History, the only history channel stockpiling pepper for persistent, unwelcome visitors.